first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the calm kind, but the heavy, unnatural silence that presses against your chest like a weight. New York City was never quiet, not at any hour of the day. But tonight, as I stood on the deck of the SS-47 Sentinel, orbiting just beyond Earth's atmosphere, the city looked frozen, like a painting. Then the silence broke. A piercing hum, low and guttural, ripped through the airwaves. Every instrument on the Sentinel's bridge lit up, warning sirens blaring. It was like the universe itself had taken a deep, guttural breath before unleashing hell. "Captain Rogers, we've got movement," shouted Lieutenant Hayes, my second in command. Her voice carried an edge of panic, but she held it together. The monitor to my left displayed a massive, dark object descending through the clouds over Manhattan. It wasn't one of ours. "This is Rogers. Activate planetary defense protocols," I barked, my voice firm despite the knot tightening in my chest. "I want eyes on that thing from every angle." "Captain." Hayes hesitated. Her normally confident demeanor faltered as she tapped the screen in front of her. "Sir, it's broadcasting something." Before I could respond, a deep, guttural voice echoed through every frequency, every device. It wasn't in English, or any language I'd ever heard, but the intent was clear: domination, destruction, extinction. I'd heard war cries before, but this was different. This wasn't anger or revenge. This was cold, calculated terror, and it was aimed squarely at us. The alien craft broke through the clouds, its massive, angular shape dwarfing every skyscraper. Blue lights pulsed along its surface, casting an eerie glow across the city. It moved with the precision of a predator, slow and deliberate, as if it already knew there was no escape. I turned to Hayes. "Deploy the drones. We need recon. Now." She nodded and relayed the command. Within seconds, a fleet of unmanned reconnaissance drones shot from the Sentinel's bays, descending toward the massive vessel. But as they closed in, the craft responded. Blue beams of light lanced out, cutting through the drones like paper. The feed on my monitor went dark, one after another, until all we had was static. "Damn it," I muttered under my breath. Back on Earth, chaos erupted. News feeds displayed civilians flooding the streets, abandoning their cars, running in every direction. The military scrambled tanks and fighter jets, but they looked like ants swarming a lion. The alien ship unleashed smaller crafts, sleek, triangular, and unnervingly fast. They darted through the city, firing energy weapons that left trails of destruction in their wake. "Captain, it's not just New York," Hayes said, her voice trembling as she pulled up multiple feeds. "These things, they're all over the planet. Paris, Tokyo, Moscow, they're everywhere." I clenched my jaw. This wasn't an attack, it was a coordinated invasion. "Get me President Stanton," I ordered. The comms officer patched me through, but all I got was static. "Hayes, what's the status of the global defense grid?" "Non-responsive, sir," she replied, her fingers flying across her console. "It's like they knew exactly where to hit us. We're blind and deaf." My mind raced. I'd seen war before, on Earth and beyond, but nothing like this. The aliens weren't just attacking. They were dismantling us piece by piece, taking out our defenses before we could even fight back. I stared at the monitor, my fists clenched. For years I'd trained for scenarios like this. I'd fought battles on distant planets, faced enemies humanity could barely comprehend. But seeing my home, our home, burning from orbit was something I wasn't prepared for. "Captain," Hayes interrupted, her voice softer now. "We've got one ship on Earth sending out a distress signal. It's a civilian craft. Small, but it's broadcasting coordinates." "Where?" "Central Park." I didn't hesitate. "Prep the dropship," I said, striding toward the hangar. "I'm going down there." Hayes' eyes widened. "Sir, with all due respect, that's insane. The city's under attack. We don't even know what's waiting for us down there." "Exactly," I replied, grabbing my helmet. "And that's why I need to be there. If someone's alive in all this, I'm not leaving them behind." Hayes nodded reluctantly, stepping back to let me pass. I could feel the eyes of the crew on me as I boarded the dropship. They didn't say it, but I knew what they were thinking. If the captain doesn't make it back, what happens to us? The engines roared to life, and the ship jolted as it detached from the Sentinel. Through the cockpit window, I could see New York below, once vibrant and alive, now reduced to smoldering chaos. We touched down near the park. The air was thick with smoke, and the distant sound of explosions echoed through the concrete jungle. I gripped my plasma rifle tightly, scanning the shadows. "Captain Rogers." A voice crackled through my earpiece. "Hayes. You've got hostiles closing in, 2 clicks north." "I see them," I replied, spotting movement ahead. A group of aliens, tall, skeletal, with glowing blue eyes, stalked through the rubble. Their weapons gleamed under the faint light of the burning skyline. This was it, the first real fight. I raised my rifle, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, "Let's see what you've got." The first shot rang out like a firework in the dead of night. My plasma rifle's burst hit the lead alien square in the chest, sending it staggering back. For a moment, I thought I had the upper hand. Then the others turned to face me. Their glowing eyes locked onto mine, and an unspoken collective decision passed between them. I was next. "Captain Rogers, you've got 6 hostiles converging on your position." Hayes' voice crackled in my earpiece. "Recommend fallback." "Fallback isn't an option," I muttered, diving behind a crumbled section of concrete. "If I don't stop them here, they'll tear through the civilians." The aliens moved in eerie synchronization, spreading out as if they'd done this 1,000 times before. Their weapons glowed an unsettling blue, emitting a high-pitched whine that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. I popped out of cover, firing off 3 more rounds. One alien went down, its weapon clattering to the ground. The others returned fire, forcing me to duck as beams of searing blue energy sliced through the air, cutting deep trenches into the ruined pavement. Through the chaos, I caught a glimpse of movement in the distance. A figure, human, darted between the trees in Central Park. They were carrying something. The distress signal. "Hayes, I've got a visual on the civilian," I said, gritting my teeth as another energy beam narrowly missed my shoulder. "Tell me you've got backup coming." "Negative, Captain. All forces are tied up in other sectors. You're on your own." "Of course I am," I muttered, reloading my rifle. The aliens were closing in fast, their movements unnervingly precise. I needed to even the odds. My eyes scanned the debris, and I spotted a broken streetlight with exposed wiring sparking faintly. An idea formed. A risky one, but it was all I had. I ripped a grenade from my belt, yanked the pin, and hurled it toward the exposed wires. The explosion sent a shower of sparks and shrapnel flying, and the burst of electricity arced through the nearest aliens, dropping 2 of them instantly. 3 down. 3 to go. I bolted toward the civilian, keeping low and weaving through the rubble. The remaining aliens pursued, their weapons firing relentlessly. One beam grazed my left arm, the searing pain nearly forcing me to drop my rifle. I bit down hard, forcing myself to keep moving. When I reached the civilian, they turned, eyes wide with terror. It was a young woman, no older than 20, clutching a strange device covered in alien markings. "You sent the distress signal?" I asked, my voice sharp. She nodded frantically. I found this. It was in their ship. I think it's important." "Good enough for me," I said, pulling her to her feet. "We need to move. Now." The aliens were relentless, their cold mechanical strides closing the distance. I could feel the heat of their weapons as they fired, each shot cutting through the night like lightning. "Hayes," I barked into my comms, "I need an extraction point now." "Captain, nearest safe zone is 4 blocks east," she replied. "I'll mark it on your HUD." I glanced at the overlay on my visor, a glowing path leading through the ruins of the city. 4 blocks might as well be 40, I muttered. "Guess we're running." The woman and I sprinted through the wreckage, the alien device clutched tightly in her arms. The aliens didn't relent, their glowing eyes cutting through the smoke like searchlights. "Captain, I'm picking up energy spikes from that device," Hayes said. "Whatever she's carrying, it's not just important, it's dangerous." "Noted," I replied, dodging another beam of energy. "But right now, it's also our ticket out of here." As we rounded a corner, a hulking alien dropped from above, landing directly in our path. It was larger than the others, with armored plating and a weapon twice the size of anything I'd seen. "Stay behind me." I said to the woman, raising my rifle. The alien charged, its weapon glowing fiercely. I fired, but the plasma rounds ricocheted off its armor. My mind raced. If I couldn't shoot through it, I'd have to find another way. I spotted a half-collapsed building to our right, its structure barely holding. "Get ready to run," I told the woman before firing at the building's support beams. The alien hesitated, as if realizing what I was doing, but it was too late. The building groaned before collapsing in a massive cloud of dust and debris, burying the alien beneath tons of concrete. "Go!" I shouted, pulling the woman forward. We reached the extraction point, a makeshift shelter where a small group of survivors had gathered. They looked at me with a mixture of hope and desperation, their faces lit by the faint glow of burning wreckage. The device in the woman's hands began to hum, its markings glowing faintly. Hayes's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Captain, that energy spike is increasing. Whatever that thing is, it's not stable." "Great," I muttered, turning to the woman. "What is this thing?" "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. "But I think it's theirs. And I think they want it back." Before I could respond, the ground shook violently. The aliens weren't done yet. Their massive ship above the city began to descend, its lights intensifying. "They're coming," I said, gripping my rifle. "And they're not leaving until they get that device." The air was electric with tension, the hum of the descending alien ship drowning out everything else. Its cold blue light bathed the city ruins in an otherworldly glow. Every survivor around me was frozen in place, their eyes fixed on the massive vessel. They knew what was coming. "Hayes, status report," I said, trying to sound more composed than I felt. Her voice came through the comm, clipped and urgent. "Captain, that ship is deploying reinforcements. Readings indicate over 100 hostiles inbound. We need to figure out what that device does, and fast." I turned to the young woman, her hands trembling as she clutched the alien artifact. The glowing markings on its surface pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. "Can you make sense of this thing?" I asked her. She shook her head. "No, but I think it's a power source. I found it plugged into one of their systems. When I pulled it out, their ship started acting. Strange. That was something. If this thing is as important to them as it seems," I said, "then maybe it's our only shot at turning this around." The survivors were tense, their whispers filling the air with fear and doubt. Some of them were armed, old rifles, scavenged pistols, but none of them looked ready for what was coming. I addressed the group, my voice firm. "Listen up. That ship is coming for us, and they're not leaving without this device. If we give it to them, they'll use it to wipe us out. But if we hold our ground, we might have a chance to fight back." A murmur of uncertainty rippled through the crowd. One man stepped forward, his face lined with dirt and exhaustion. "Captain, we've seen what they can do. We don't stand a chance." I stepped closer, locking eyes with him. "Maybe we don't, but I've seen worse odds than this, and I'm still standing. If we give up now, we're already dead. But if we fight, if we make them bleed, we might just survive." It wasn't a rousing speech, but it was enough. Slowly, the survivors began to ready themselves, taking up defensive positions around the extraction point. The first wave hit like a thunderstorm. The aliens moved with cold precision, their glowing eyes cutting through the smoke and chaos. Plasma fire erupted in every direction as we returned fire, the air thick with the smell of burning metal and ozone. I stuck close to the woman and the device, protecting her as best I could while taking down hostiles. My rifle hummed with each shot, the plasma rounds finding their marks more often than not. But for every alien that fell, 2 more seemed to take its place. "Hayes!" I shouted over the comm. "We're getting overwhelmed here. Tell me you've got something for me." "Working on it, Captain," she replied. "Scans show that device is emitting a signal. It's tied directly to their ship's command systems. If we can amplify it, we might be able to disrupt their network." "Amplify it how?" I asked, ducking behind cover as an alien beam tore through a nearby wall. "You're not going to like this," Hayes said. "You'll need to get it back onto their ship." I cursed under my breath. "Of course I will." The battle raged on and our defenses were crumbling. The aliens were relentless, their energy weapons tearing through our barricades like paper. I knew we couldn't hold out much longer. "Hayes, get the dropship prepped," I said. "We're taking the fight to them." "Captain, that's suicide," she protested. "It's also our only shot," I replied. "If we don't stop them now, there won't be anyone left to save." I turned to the woman, her face pale but determined. "You're coming with me. You're the only one who knows how this thing works." She nodded, clutching the device tightly. "Let's do it." The dropship's engines roared as we lifted off, the battlefield shrinking below us. The alien mothership loomed ahead, its surface shimmering with an unearthly light. "Hayes, keep me updated," I said, my grip tightening on my rifle. "Scans show a docking bay on the port side," she said. "You'll need to get inside and place the device near their core systems. I'll guide you as best I can." The closer we got, the more oppressive the ship felt. Its sheer size was overwhelming, a testament to the advanced technology of our invaders. "Brace yourselves," I said as we approached the docking bay. "This is going to get rough." The dropship landed with a jarring thud, and we spilled out into the alien vessel. The air was thick with an acrid metallic scent, and the walls pulsed faintly with a blue light, as if the ship were alive. "Stay close," I told the woman as we moved through the corridors, my rifle raised. The alien architecture was disorienting, its angular design unlike anything I'd seen before. "Captain, I'm detecting movement," Hayes said. "You've got hostiles closing in." "Of course we do," I muttered, motioning for the woman to take cover. The aliens came at us in force, their weapons blazing. The tight corridors worked to our advantage, funneling them into my line of fire. But it was clear they weren't trying to kill us. They were trying to stop us. "Hayes, where's the core?" I shouted, firing off another round. "2 levels up," she replied. "There's an elevator ahead, but it's guarded." "Figures," I said, reloading. "Stay low. I'll handle this." The elevator was heavily fortified, with a squad of aliens blocking our path. I used every trick I knew: grenades, close-quarters combat, even a bit of luck, to break through their defenses. By the time we reached the elevator, I was running on adrenaline and sheer determination. We rode the elevator in silence, the hum of the ship's systems filling the air. The woman looked at me, her eyes filled with both fear and hope. "Do you think this will work?" she asked. I hesitated before answering. "It has to." As the elevator doors opened, we stepped into the heart of the ship. The core was massive, a swirling mass of energy that seemed to defy logic. The device in the woman's hands began to glow brighter, its hum growing louder. "Let's finish this," I said, stepping forward. The energy core loomed before us, a swirling vortex of blinding blue light. The sheer magnitude of its power filled the chamber with a low, ominous hum that reverberated through my chest. The walls around it weren't just alien. They were alive, rippling and shifting as if the ship itself was breathing. "Captain, that's the ship's core," Hayes said through the comm. "It's their nerve center. If you disrupt it, you'll shut down their systems across the planet." But it's going to be messy," I finished, my eyes scanning the core's perimeter. A squad of alien guards stood between us and our target. They weren't your run-of-the-mill grunts either. Their movements were precise, their glowing blue weapons trained on every angle. I turned to the woman beside me. Her knuckles were white as she clutched the alien device, its glow pulsating in sync with the core. "You ready for this?" I asked. She nodded, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Let's finish this." We moved swiftly, using the shadows of the chamber to stay out of sight. My rifle hummed softly in my hands as I aimed at the nearest alien, my finger hovering over the trigger. One well-placed shot hit its mark, the alien collapsing silently. But before I could take another, the others reacted, their weapons blazing. "Stay low!" I shouted, taking cover as beams of energy sliced through the air. My shots were precise, targeting the gaps in their armor. Hayes' advice about their weak spots paid off, and 2 more went down, their weapons clattering to the floor. The woman darted toward the core, clutching the device tightly. The hum grew louder as she approached, the core's light intensifying with each step. The aliens realized her intent and shifted their focus, firing at her without hesitation. I stepped into their line of fire, returning their assault with everything I had. My rifle overheated, forcing me to switch to my sidearm. Every shot was calculated, every move deliberate. I had to keep them off her. "Captain, more hostiles incoming," Hayes warned. "The ship's defenses are pulling everything they've got to your location." "Of course they are," I muttered, ducking behind a pillar as an explosion tore through the air. "How long does she need?" "The device is synchronizing with the core," Hayes said. 2 minutes, maybe less." The woman reached the core, the device in her hands glowing brighter than ever. She hesitated for a moment, staring at the swirling energy before her. "Do it!" I shouted, firing off another round at the advancing aliens. With a deep breath, she placed the device against the core. It locked into place with a resounding click, and the chamber trembled violently. The core's light flared, its hum turning into a deafening roar. The aliens faltered, their movements becoming erratic. Their weapons flickered, and some of them collapsed mid-stride. The feedback loop was working. "Captain, the core is destabilizing," Hayes said. "You've got about a minute before that ship goes up in flames." I grabbed the woman's arm, pulling her away from the core. "Move," I shouted. The chamber was coming apart, the walls cracking and sparking as the ship's systems failed. We sprinted toward the elevator, dodging falling debris and stray energy surges. The aliens that were still standing barely reacted, their connection to the ship severed. The elevator doors slid open, and we stumbled inside, slamming the controls. As it ascended, the vibrations of the ship's impending collapse rattled the walls around us. "Hayes, tell me the dropship is still there," I said, gripping the handrail as the elevator shook violently. "It's waiting for you, Captain," she replied. "But you need to hurry." When the doors opened, chaos greeted us. The docking bay was in ruins, alien crafts crumpled like toys under the strain of the ship's implosion. We pushed forward, weaving through the wreckage. The dropship came into view, its engines already roaring. We dove inside just as the bay began to collapse, and I shouted to the pilot, "Get us out of here!" The dropship rocketed out of the alien vessel, the skyline of New York coming into view as the mothership erupted behind us. The explosion lit up the night, a massive shockwave rocking the dropship but leaving it intact. For a moment, there was silence. Real silence. The woman sat across from me, clutching her knees, her face a mix of relief and exhaustion. I leaned back, letting out a long breath. "Good work," I said, my voice heavy with fatigue. She gave me a faint smile. "We did it." I looked out the window, the smoldering remains of the mothership now falling toward the ocean. The battle wasn't over, not yet. But tonight, we'd won. The glow of the explosion faded into the distance, but the image of the alien mothership disintegrating above New York was seared into my mind. For a moment, the dropship's cabin was eerily silent. The survivors who'd fought beside me were slumped in their seats, exhaustion etched on their faces. The woman who carried the alien device sat across from me, her trembling hands still clutching her knees. "Captain, the mothership's signal is gone." Hayes's voice crackled through my comm. "And the others are shutting down, globally." I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "You're telling me it worked?" "It worked," she confirmed. "The alien forces on the ground are disoriented. Their smaller ships are falling out of the sky. Whatever that device did, it didn't just destroy the mothership, it severed their connection to the rest of their forces." A faint cheer erupted from the survivors in the cabin, but it was subdued. Victory felt hollow when the city below was still in ruins, smoke rising from the scars of the invasion. The dropship banked hard, descending toward what remained of Central Park. The once lush greenery was now a battlefield of scorched earth and rubble. As we landed, I stepped out into the open air, the acrid scent of burning metal and ash filling my lungs. The survivors followed hesitantly, their eyes scanning the wreckage for signs of life. The woman approached me, her expression still tense. "Captain, if they're disconnected, does that mean it's over? Or are they coming back?" I didn't have an answer. "For now, we've bought ourselves time. But something tells me this was just the opening move. Whoever or whatever sent them might not stop here." Her gaze dropped to the ground, and I could see the weight of the day settling over her. I hope this was worth it." "It was," I said firmly. "You helped save this city, maybe even the planet. Don't lose sight of that." As I moved through the park, I surveyed the wreckage. Alien technology was scattered everywhere. remnants of their fallen ships and weapons embedded in the earth. The city's emergency crews were beginning to emerge, cautiously approaching the ruins. Civilians who had been hiding during the invasion began trickling out, their faces a mix of fear and cautious hope. Hayes' voice came through my comm again. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange. The energy readings from the device, it's still active." I stopped in my tracks. "What do you mean active? It was supposed to destabilize the core." "It did," she said quickly, "but it's still emitting a signal, a low-frequency one. It's weak, but it's there." I turned to the woman, her eyes widening in alarm as I relayed Hayes' words. She looked down at the device in her hands, its once bright glow now a faint, steady pulse. "I thought it was destroyed when the core went down," she said. "How is it still alive?" "I don't think it's alive," I replied, taking the device from her carefully. "But if it's still transmitting, it might be trying to reach something, or someone." The implications hit me like a freight train. The invasion wasn't just a display of power, it was a test, a coordinated effort to measure our resistance. And if this signal was anything to go by, someone out there was listening. "Hayes, can you isolate the signal's origin?" I asked. "Already on it," she replied. "It's faint, but, Captain, it's not local. It's coming from deep space." My jaw tightened. "How deep are we talking?" "Farther than anything our current tech can pinpoint," she said. "But if I had to guess, this signal is reaching whoever sent them here in the first place." I looked up at the sky, the faint glimmers of stars just barely visible through the haze of smoke. The thought of something, or someone, watching from the void sent a chill down my spine. "We've been marked," I muttered. "They're not done with us." The woman stepped closer, her voice shaking. "If this is just the beginning, what do we do? How do we fight something we don't even understand?" I turned to her, my expression firm. "We adapt. That's what humanity does best. We figure out their tech, we learn from it, and we prepare for whatever's coming next." The resolve in my voice was enough to steady her nerves, but inside I wasn't so sure. The device in my hands wasn't just a weapon, it was a message, and I had no doubt that the aliens would be back to finish what they started. The park was slowly filling with more survivors, their numbers growing as emergency responders began setting up makeshift shelters. The devastation was staggering, but amidst the destruction, there was hope. People were helping each other, pulling others from the rubble, sharing what little supplies they had. Hayes interrupted my thoughts. "Captain, one more thing. That signal, it's increasing in strength. Whatever it's trying to do, it's not done yet." "Then we don't have time to waste," I said, turning back to the dropship. The jump left us floating in the void, the Sentinel's sensors straining to make sense of the scene before us. The nebula stretched out like a living thing, its swirling hues of dark blue and violet crackling with veins of energy. It looked like a cosmic storm, but the readings told a different story. "Captain, we've reached the coordinates," Hayes said through the comm. "The signal's coming from inside that thing." I leaned over the console, studying the pulsating mass on the monitor. "Any idea what's in there?" "None," she replied. "The energy field is disrupting our sensors, but this isn't natural. It's artificial." That word hung in the air, sending a chill through the bridge. "They built it," I said, half to myself. "That's what it looks like," Hayes confirmed. "The energy field is a barrier, a fortress. Whatever's inside, they don't want us to find it." The crew was silent as we launched a probe into the nebula. The tiny vessel disappeared into the swirling chaos, transmitting fragmented data back to us. Hayes worked quickly, her face tightening with every new reading. "Captain," she said after a moment, "it's not just a fortress, it's a hub. The signal isn't just broadcasting, it's connected to something massive, a network." "What kind of network?" I asked. "Everything," Hayes replied. "The ships, the soldiers, the mothership we destroyed, it all ties back here. This is their hive mind." Before I could respond, the probe's signal cut out. The ship vibrated faintly, as if something vast and unseen had noticed our presence. "Captain, we've been detected," Hayes called out. "Energy signatures, multiple contacts. They're coming." From the nebula emerged alien ships, faster and more menacing than anything we'd faced before. Their sleek forms moved with deadly grace, their glowing blue weapons already locking onto us. "Battle stations," I barked, gripping the console. "Hayes, options?" "Minimal," she admitted. "We're outgunned and there's no clear way out. The energy field is closing behind us." "Then we go through it," I said. "Find us a way to the signal source." The Sentinel surged forward, its weapons blazing. Alien ships swarmed around us, their beams slicing through the void, narrowly missing the hull. Our shields groaned under the assault, and every hit jolted the ship like a punch to the gut. "Shields at 50%, Hayes reported. "We can't hold them off much longer." "We don't have to," I replied. "Just get us to that signal." The woman stood beside me, gripping the edge of the console. "If we make it through, what's the plan?" "Improvise," I said, keeping my focus on the chaos ahead. "Like always." As we closed in on the signal, the nebula seemed to part, revealing the source. It wasn't a planet nor a ship, but a colossal structure, ancient and pulsing with alien energy. Its surface was covered in glyphs, glowing faintly in sync with the signal's rhythm. "Captain," Hayes said, her voice filled with awe and fear. "That's it. That's their core. If we take it out, we disrupt their entire network." "And if we fail?" the woman asked. "Then it's over," I said grimly. "For everyone." The Sentinel moved closer, but the alien ships weren't letting up. Their attacks grew more desperate, as if they understood what we were about to do. Sparks flew across the bridge as another hit rocked the ship. "Shields at 15%, Hayes shouted. "We're not going to last much longer." "Then we make this count," I said, turning to the woman. "The device, can it do the same thing it did to the mothership?" She nodded, though her hands trembled. "Yes, but it'll take everything out, including us." I met her gaze, the weight of the moment sinking in. "Then we do what we have to." As we prepared for the final run, the Sentinel charged toward the structure. The alien ships closed in, their weapons hammering at our defenses. The bridge was chaos, but amidst the fire and smoke, I felt a strange calm. "Hayes, tell the crew," I said, my voice steady. "This is it. All or nothing." "Understood, Captain," she replied. "Good luck." The structure loomed larger with every second, its energy building into a crescendo. The device in the woman's hands pulsed brighter, its glow matching the core ahead. This was the endgame. One way or another, it all ended here. The Sentinel emerged through the swirling chaos of the nebula, battered but still intact. The massive alien structure at the center of the storm loomed ahead, its intricate spires and glowing glyphs pulsing with energy. It was unlike anything we had encountered, an ancient construct that seemed both alive and hostile. "Captain," Hayes said over the comm, her voice steady but tense. "We're locked onto the source of the signal. That's the core of their network. If we disable it, we could sever their entire hive mind." "And if we fail?" I asked, gripping the console. She hesitated. "Then we don't come back." The crew was silent, each of them aware of the stakes. The alien ships swarming around us moved with deadly precision, their weapons pounding our shields. "Battle stations!" I shouted. "This is our last shot. We make it count." The Sentinel surged forward, firing every weapon at its disposal. Plasma rounds tore through the void, striking several enemy ships, but more took their place. The structure ahead seemed to react to our approach, its energy pulses intensifying as we drew closer. "Shields at 30%, Hayes called out. "We won't last much longer." "Hayes, I need a path to the core," I demanded. "There's an opening between the spires," she replied. "It's narrow, but it'll get you to the core's center. That's where the device needs to go." The alien ships closed in, their attacks growing more desperate. Each hit rattled the ship, sparks flying from overloaded systems. The woman clutched the glowing device, its hum growing louder as the core's pulses synced with it. "Captain," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If we get this into the core, it'll destabilize everything, but it'll destroy the Sentinel too." "I know," I replied, meeting her determined gaze. "We came here to end this, and we will." The Sentinel plunged into the gap between the spires, narrowly avoiding the alien barrage. The energy field around the structure crackled with intensity, threatening to tear us apart. I gripped the controls tightly as Hayes guided us toward the core. "We're in position," she shouted. "Now or never, Captain." "Let's do it," I barked, grabbing my rifle. "You're with me," I said to the woman, and she nodded without hesitation. We stepped into the airlock, the roar of the core filling the chamber. Alien drones descended from above, their movements frantic as they tried to stop us. I fired at them, my plasma rifle lighting up the darkness as the woman pressed forward with the device. "I'm almost there," she shouted, dodging a blast from one of the drones. "Keep moving," I yelled, taking out another drone as it lunged toward her. The core pulsed wildly as she reached its center, the glyphs on its surface glowing in a frenzied rhythm. She slammed the device into place, its energy fusing with the core. The entire structure trembled violently. "Captain, the core is destabilizing," Hayes' voice crackled in my ear. "You have less than a minute to get out of there." I grabbed the woman's arm, pulling her back toward the Sentinel as the core began to collapse. The drones faltered, their movement slowing as the hive mind unraveled. Behind us, the core erupted in a blinding flash of light, sending a shockwave through the structure. "Punch it, Hayes!" I shouted as we re-entered the Sentinel. The ship's engines roared to life, propelling us out of the collapsing structure. The alien ships around us disintegrated, their connection to the hive severed. The explosion consumed the nebula, its violent energy lighting up the void. "Shields critical, but we're clear," Hayes called out, relief in her voice. I slumped into my seat, watching the remnants of the alien network dissolve into the darkness. For a moment, there was silence. Then the bridge erupted in cheers. We had done it. The woman sat beside me, her face streaked with ash, but her expression one of quiet determination. "Is it over?" she asked softly. I looked at the wreckage on the monitor and shook my head. "For now. But they'll be back. And when they come, we'll be ready." I turned to Hayes. "Keep scanning for signals. If there's another hive out there, we need to know." "Understood, Captain," she replied. As the Sentinel drifted into the quiet expanse of space, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. We had survived this battle, but the war was far from over. Somewhere out there they were watching, and so were we. The Sentinel emerged through the swirling chaos of the nebula, battered but still intact. The massive alien structure at the center of the storm loomed ahead, its intricate spires and glowing glyphs pulsing with energy. It was unlike anything we had encountered, an ancient construct that seemed both alive and hostile. "Captain," Hayes said over the comm, her voice steady but tense. "We're locked onto the source of the signal. That's the core of their network. If we disable it, we could sever their entire hive mind." "And if we fail?" I asked, gripping the console. She hesitated. "Then we don't come back." The crew was silent, each of them aware of the stakes. The alien ships swarming around us moved with deadly precision, their weapons pounding our shields. "Battle stations!" I shouted. "This is our last shot. We make it count." The Sentinel surged forward, firing every weapon at its disposal. Plasma rounds tore through the void, striking several enemy ships, but more took their place. The structure ahead seemed to react to our approach, its energy pulses intensifying as we drew closer. "Shields at 30%, Hayes called out. "We won't last much longer." "Hayes, I need a path to the core," I demanded. "There's an opening between the spires," she replied. "It's narrow, but it'll get you to the core's center. That's where the device needs to go." The alien ships closed in, their attacks growing more desperate. Each hit rattled the ship, sparks flying from overloaded systems. The woman clutched the glowing device, its hum growing louder as the core's pulses synced with it. "Captain," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If we get this into the core, it'll destabilize everything, but it'll destroy the Sentinel too." "I know," I replied, meeting her determined gaze. "We came here to end this, and we will." The Sentinel plunged into the gap between the spires, narrowly avoiding the alien barrage. The energy field around the structure crackled with intensity, threatening to tear us apart. I gripped the controls tightly as Hayes guided us toward the core. "We're in position," she shouted. "Now or never, Captain." "Let's do it," I barked, grabbing my rifle. "You're with me," I said to the woman, and she nodded without hesitation. We stepped into the airlock, the roar of the core filling the chamber. Alien drones descended from above, their movements frantic as they tried to stop us. I fired at them, my plasma rifle lighting up the darkness as the woman pressed forward with the device. "I'm almost there," she shouted, dodging a blast from one of the drones. "Keep moving," I yelled, taking out another drone as it lunged toward her. The core pulsed wildly as she reached its center, the glyphs on its surface glowing in a frenzied rhythm. She slammed the device into place, its energy fusing with the core. The entire structure trembled violently. "Captain, the core is destabilizing," Hayes' voice crackled in my ear. "You have less than a minute to get out of there." I grabbed the woman's arm, pulling her back toward the Sentinel as the core began to collapse. The drones faltered, their movements slowing as the hive mind unraveled. Behind us, the core erupted in a blinding flash of light, sending a shockwave through the structure. "Punch it, Hayes!" I shouted as we re-entered the Sentinel. The ship's engines roared to life, propelling us out of the collapsing structure. The alien ships around us disintegrated, their connection to the hive severed. The explosion consumed the nebula, its violent energy lighting up the void. "Shields critical, but we're clear," Hayes called out, relief in her voice. I slumped into my seat, watching the remnants of the alien network dissolve into the darkness. For a moment, there was silence. Then the bridge erupted in cheers. We had done it. The woman sat beside me, her face streaked with ash, but her expression one of quiet determination. "Is it over?" she asked softly. I looked at the wreckage on the monitor and shook my head. "For now. But they'll be back. And when they come, we'll be ready." I turned to Hayes. "Keep scanning for signals. If there's another hive out there, we need to know." "Understood, Captain," she replied. As the Sentinel drifted into the quiet expanse of space, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. We had survived this battle, but the war was far from over. Somewhere out there they were watching, and so were we. The Sentinel cruised silently through the void, Earth's faint blue glow on the horizon. The bridge was subdued, every crew member weighed down by the discovery from the Erebus logs. The alien hive we destroyed was only one of many, a single node in a vast, interconnected empire. "Captain," Hayes called, breaking the silence, "we've finished decoding another portion of the logs. You need to see this." I stepped to her console. The star map flickered, dozens of red markers appearing. "These are all hive locations," she explained. "Each one represents another network. The scale of this? It's an empire, Captain. They're everywhere." "And Earth?" I asked, already dreading the answer. She hesitated. "It's on their expansion path. We're not just a target. We're a testing ground." The weight of her words settled over the bridge. Destroying one hive hadn't ended the war. It had only delayed it. And if the logs were correct, Earth's survival depended on being ready for what came next. "Hayes, how soon until we're within comms range of Earth?" I asked. 2 hours, she replied. "But Captain, I've been detecting strange signals. Weak, encrypted, and they're coming from Earth itself." "Decode them," I ordered. "If someone's sending hidden transmissions, I want to know why." Hours later, Hayes cracked the signal. "Captain, it's military-grade encryption. The message says, 'Project Firewall initiated. Earth defenses compromised. Prepare for contact.'" The bridge went silent. "What does it mean?" the woman asked, her voice trembling. "It means the aliens are already here," I said. "And Earth knows it." When we arrived in orbit, the source of the signal became clear. A massive military station, armed with heavy defenses, floated above the planet. It wasn't on any official records, and its construction had been hidden from the public. "We're being hailed," Hayes said. "Patch it through," I replied. The screen flickered, revealing a stern-faced general. His uniform bore no insignia I recognized. "This is General Clark, commanding Project Firewall." "Identify yourself." "Captain Rogers, Sentinel," I said. "We've returned from deep space recon with critical intel on the alien threat." "You're late, Captain," Clark replied flatly. The invasion has already begun. His words hit like a thunderclap. Explain, I demanded. Alien strike teams have been infiltrating Earth's defenses for months, he said. Their tech is advanced and they're probing our weaknesses. Without your intel, we're fighting blind. We have what you need, I said firmly. The Erebus logs detail their networks and strategies, but we'll need to work together to stop them. Clark nodded. Dock at Firewall Station. We'll debrief and start integrating the data. As we docked, the crew exchanged nervous glances. Earth wasn't just under threat, it was already under siege. The woman stayed close as we entered the station, her eyes scanning the cold, metallic corridors. Do you trust them? She whispered. No, I admitted, but we don't have a choice. In the command center, massive screens displayed Earth's orbit. Dozens of red blips marked alien incursions. Clark stood in front of the display, his expression grim. This data gives us an edge, he said, but it's not enough. We need more firepower, and fast. I crossed my arms, studying the map. We'll secure Earth first, but after that we take the fight to them. Clark nodded. Agreed. Whatever your plan is, Captain, make it count. Back on the Sentinel, I stood at the viewport, staring down at Earth's fragile beauty. The fight ahead was overwhelming, but we had no choice. Hayes, prep the crew, I ordered. We're not done yet. The engines roared to life as we prepared to leave. The next battle was coming, and this time, we would be ready. RC-10, the final stand. The Sentinel's engines hummed steadily as it left Firewall Station, Earth shrinking into the distance. Below, the planet prepared for an inevitable assault. Its fragile defenses stretched thin against a relentless enemy. The Erebus logs had revealed the scale of the alien empire, and Project Firewall had confirmed the worst. Earth was already under siege. Captain, Hayes called from the bridge. The signal from the hive has completely disappeared. Their network is fractured, but it won't stay that way for long. How long do we have? I asked, already bracing for the answer. Days, maybe less, she replied. The logs suggest a fallback protocol. When one hive falls, others converge on its location to re-establish control. Then they're coming here, I muttered. And this time, they won't send scouts. They'll send everything. The bridge was quiet as the crew processed the gravity of the situation. The woman, now an integral part of our mission, stood beside me, her expression set with resolve. If they're coming, we need to stop them here, for good. We will, I said, turning to Hayes. What do we have left in the Sentinel's arsenal? Not much, she admitted. But if we push the reactor to its limits, we could rig the ship to generate a localized EMP strong enough to disable their ships. It'd leave us defenseless, but it could turn the tide. A silence fell over the bridge. The crew knew the cost of such a move. The Sentinel wouldn't survive. It's our best shot, I said finally. Start the preparations. We returned to Firewall Station, coordinating with Clark and his team. The station's orbital cannons were impressive, but they wouldn't withstand a full-scale invasion. Clark studied our plan with a grim nod. If your EMP works, it'll give us a chance to strike, but you'll be the bait. Wouldn't have it any other way, I replied. The Sentinel will draw them in. You focus on taking them out once they're disabled. The countdown began. Earth's defenses rallied, every resource directed toward the coming battle. Civilians were evacuated to bunkers while the skies filled with every ship capable of flight. It wasn't enough, but it was all we had. Captain, Hayes said, we're picking up movement on long-range sensors. They're here. The display lit up with dozens, no, hundreds, of alien ships emerging from hyperspace. Their sleek forms blotted out the stars, their glowing weapons aimed squarely at Earth. All hands to battle stations, I barked. This is it. The Sentinel surged forward, its engines burning at maximum as we dove into the swarm. Alien ships converged on us instantly, their weapons tearing through the void. The bridge shook violently as each hit rocked the hull. Shields at 20%, Hayes shouted. We won't last long. Just hold them off, I said, gripping the console. Get us into position. The alien ships moved with terrifying precision, their attacks relentless. But the Sentinel held its course, drawing them closer to the heart of the fleet. The woman stood by the reactor controls, her hands steady despite the chaos. "Captain," she called, "we're ready to deploy the EMP." "Do it," I said, locking eyes with her. "And get to the escape pods. That's an order." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Good luck, Captain." The reactor's hum grew deafening as the EMP charged. Energy crackled through the ship, the lights flickering as systems overloaded. The alien ships closed in, their weapons lighting up for a final barrage. "EMP ready," Hayes said. "Your call, Captain." I took a deep breath, my gaze fixed on the enemy fleet. "Fire." The EMP detonated in a brilliant wave of energy, spreading outward in a blinding pulse. Alien ships froze mid-flight, their weapons going dark as their systems failed. The Sentinel shuddered under the strain, its reactor groaning in protest. "Direct hit," Hayes shouted. "The fleet is disabled." Firewall Station and Earth's forces seized the moment, unleashing everything they had on the paralyzed alien ships. One by one, the enemy vessels exploded, their once mighty fleet reduced to rubble. Cheers erupted over the comms, but aboard the Sentinel, the mood was somber. The EMP had done its job, but the Sentinel was dead in the water. Systems were offline, and the reactor was beyond repair. The ship drifted in the void, its once bright lights flickering out. "Escape pods are ready," Hayes said quietly. "It's time to go." I nodded, rising from my chair for the last time. The woman stood at the airlock, waiting for me. "You did it," she said softly. "We all did," I replied. "But this isn't over. They'll be back." She nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "Then we'll be ready." The escape pods launched, scattering into the safety of Earth's orbit. From the viewport, I watched as Firewall Station finished off the last alien ship. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. As the Sentinel's wreckage drifted silently into the void, I whispered to myself, "We'll fight them again. And next time, we won't just survive. We'll win."